And if you'll go to YouTube and type in Mike Rotunda with an A versus Death Row, you'll see this 3-minute and 36-second affair. Normally, I wouldn't direct you to YouTube to watch a WWE program or something they own, but this is not on Peacock, of course. But this is interesting, and it stands out because I guess Death Row, I don't know, a large American gentleman. It feels as if he maybe hit Mike with a couple of live rounds, and Mike had to remind him who he was and that he could wrestle him down to the ground anytime he wanted and do whatever he wanted with him. It is unlike any quote unquote enhancement match I've ever seen. And it looks like Death Row was not done. Even though the match was over, he was not done with the situation. And supposedly, according to the newsletters at the time, wrestlers from the locker room come out and stop it. Of course, that doesn't air. But still, this interaction with Mike Rotundo and an enhancement guy named Death Row goes a little too far. Do you remember seeing this one?
Yeah, and it reminds me of the old cliche, don't confuse kindness as a weakness.
Right.
Rotunda, such a nice guy, total pro. But, you take one live round, okay, he potatoed me. I got sent to Spud City. And then he does it again because he thinks he can get away with it and get over. And then that didn't flush. So, like I said, Mike Rotunda is a tough guy.
You've been really generous with your time tonight, and I really appreciate it. But I have to ask you to set the record straight about an incident that was really covered on the internet, on social media, from about 2019, and I've read the account, and again, it sounds that the individual in question was again unprofessional, but it was a shoot incident that occurred on an independent show. Could you, for those fans that aren't aware of that, could you describe what happened there and set the record straight in terms of the actuality of the situation?
Absolutely. You know what? When you I've had a couple of people contact me in the past, and I didn't want to talk to them. But I know I've seen your stuff on YouTube, and it's top quality. And when I actually didn't read it at first, I was like, it's just another guy, whatever. But when I saw who it was, I was like, this guy has a quality YouTube show. And I'm not trying to put you over, even though I guess I am.
I appreciate it.
I have never spoken about this because at the time when it happened, like a lot of the boys, I had my own demons. I did a lot of things and made a lot of poor choices in life. Okay. And it's always, partying, the pills and this and that and the other. And it led me into a situation where I went to prison for 4.5 years almost. It was like 4 years and 3 months. Okay. So I get out, and in 2018 or 2008, yeah, it was 2018. And I'm still on parole for a year. Okay. So my youngest son, into the business, and he's going down to George South's wrestling school in Charlotte. I'd go down there. He'd go there twice a week. I'd drive down on Tuesdays. It's about an hour from where I live now. And he's wanting to get in the business. And so I'm looking around thinking, okay, well, he's got to get some experience somewhere. And there was a guy, Julian Strauss, and I think it's called Revolution Wrestling. And I was like, hey, can you book my kid for some of these shows? And he's like, well, yeah, but we would rather have, also have you involved, this, that, and the other. Long story short from that is we do a build-up. They would run every month, once a month. And the month before, they did a gimmick where my son would go to the ring to accept some kind of award for my dad, his grandfather, on his behalf. And this kid comes out and attacks him. Well, my son had been doing bumps and done all kinds of stuff to know how to take a bump. Well, and I even told the kid, his name was Jacob Ryan. And I was like, look, he's green. Just take care of him. Well, somehow, because maybe Jacob Ryan was 5'4", I don't know. He clotheslined my son so hard in his lower ribs that he fractured ribs, and he ended up in the hospital. And I've watched that video hundreds of times thinking, maybe what did my son do wrong that this happened. But no, it was a stiff ass clothesline. All right. So the next month I'm supposed to come back there to work with them. And I was always raised, and it's like I told my wife a little while ago, you don't understand what it's like to hear in your head all the time. You have a couple of choices in a match. It's not my responsibility if the other guy can't make himself look good, then you take over. And it's also my responsibility to take care of myself. So I'm going to this match knowing this guy has fractured my son's ribs. I told the promoter, I'm going to be stiff on him. He had no idea what stiff. And so we get in there. There was a couple different versions of that video that went out. And I thought the first one, which disappeared, was the best because I was talking about what it's like to be raised in the business and given a receipt and blah, 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 blah. And so finally, by the time I hooked up with this, he just drops to the ground and starts crying like a baby. And I start close. I mean, I'm giving him forearms, and again, I've said this many times. I can't believe it blew up like it did. That was why back in the day, you had to be a wrestler to be a wrestler, because when somebody shit happens, you have to protect yourself. So I lock up with him. He goes down and I start forearming him, and he starts crying. And it was kind of like you don't run from there kind of thing, because something did snap a little bit. That is not how I meant that match to end up. I mean, I just thought I'd get stiff on him a little bit, then we'd have a match. But he starts crying like a baby, and something just tripped in me from all those voices I had heard in my head about growing up, about you got to be a man to be in this business. If they want to look bad, let them look bad, but you take care of yourself. And so, yeah, I got extra stiff on him. And I mean, if I wanted, I could have killed him, I guess. I don't mean, and yeah, they rang the bell. It was over. The whole dressing room comes out eventually. Fortunately, I had two guys, a guy from work that brought his son with him. And I'm sitting there in the dressing room, and this Johnny Fairplay guy who was like on, what's it called?
TNA.
Survivor.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's like doing the play-by-play. He comes walking through the dressing room. I'm the only one in the dressing room. And I mean, I'm still, and he just walks through. And about 3 or 4 minutes later, I hear banging on the door. And so all this, and again, let me stop for just a second. Nobody shook my hand in that dressing room. I didn't know who the boys were, who they weren't. There's fucking kids running around. There's a guy sitting reversed on a metal chair, and a girl's popping zits on his back. So this is kind of the professional part of this show. And so once this happened, they all ran outside. Someone kicks the friggin' door, and I'm like, come out, motherfucker. And I go outside, and there's like 12, 15, maybe 20 people. And he's in the back, the guy that I wrestled. And my coworker, Len, he's out there with his son. His son's playing college football and looks more like a wrestler than any of these jabronis did. And, with 12 people on one, yeah, it sounds like a good fight. And one of them steps up, and I was like, well, come on then, motherfucker, And he's like, oh, just, and the guy I wrestled, he's in the back, you broke my tooth, I'm pressing charges. And there was a sheriff there, and he said, there's no pressing charges. This is wrestling. Even the sheriff, who was not smart to the business, he was just hired to be there for, security protection. He's like, this is wrestling. And so, but I brought up the earlier part because I was on parole. And when you're on parole, any infraction against you, you get locked back up for. Okay. So this fucking idiot found some magistrate that could file an assault charge on me. I spent 65 days in jail before this trial happened because of this jabroni. And we had a full trial. It was like the most comical thing. Like we had to reenact the whole match, or they did, excuse me. They showed the video footage of it. The prosecutor's she has her assistant prosecutor up there talking about what a DDT is. And oh my God. And my lawyer was awesome. And So he brings the kid up on the platform. My wife's over here laughing because she was there watching it. And he's talking about how, well, I'm more of the new generation wrestler and he's more of the old school. And the judge stops him there and said, I don't know what old school or new school is. He goes, all I remember is Ole and Gene Anderson. And I was like, I'm like, a lawyer on his leg. He's, that's my dad. He goes, I know, that's why I choose this lawyer. And so they're doing this whole thing up there. And the judge, he's just getting fucking pissed. He's going through, he's not even paying attention to what happened anymore. He's flipping his law books out. And then at the end of it, he's sitting like this. He's like, are you done? Dismissed. But that doesn't take the fact this fucking idiot, I spent 64 or 65 days in jail because the first part was my fault. I mean, I made poor choices and I was on parole. But I even looked into suing this kid. But I mean, what are you going to get from somebody that's 24 years old? But yeah, I believe in karma.
Wow, if that isn't an indictment of the generational differences between so-called old school and new school, I've never heard anything that comes close to that.
Claim dismissed. Have a good day.
The potential danger situation where it could have went sideways was one night stand, and it already went kind of sideways with John and Meanie. When John was blasting Meanie and punching him, because all those guys have been drinking up in the balcony. And that was something where I was like, everybody knows, the fans know, and the fans are very aggressive too. And it's Hammerstein Ballroom. So probably 10 seconds, all I could think of is, are the fans going to start hopping the guardrail and going after John? Are the WWE's going to fight the fans? Are they going to turn to us and start fighting? So there was a potential of that. It was a very tense situation. Like, I wasn't in the room with them two. I wasn't in the room with Vince. Nova and I were very separated from that. But the fact that it was happening at all could have been so many different things. So you just don't know. It's kind of live to tape anyway. It wasn't live SmackDown, but it was Tuesday taping. But deep down, I said, like, if we get through this or whatever happens, because I didn't even know the finish for a while, with like who was going over or anything. I was saying, if anything happened, if we get through this and it's cordial or civil, it's literally just to avoid the lawsuit that Minnie potentially obviously had off of because you had video footage of them getting drunk, you had the fight, you had everything, the dangerous work environment, all that stuff that could have been brought to court.
Did anybody, and now I'm paraphrasing about 15 different people asking more or less the same question here, but did anybody put their arm around you and say, listen, kid, you really lay that chair shot in this time?
No, as a matter of fact, when I came back in Gorilla, it was a ghost town. Vince wasn't even
Really?
No, it was a very much and I have to say this is where, in a way, I know it lives in urban legend, and it's some kind of myth that people talk about, because obviously the story of it is obviously, wow, Bradshaw did this thing, and then the karma came back, or the receipt, or Stevie was defending Meanie, which, by the way, at the time, if I could have interpreted even what was happening at the time at One Night Stand, Al Snow was already kind of heading that direction. We would have got John away from Meanie before anything even happened. But who's done? It's a work sense. So when you're in a work situation and it turns into a shoot, there's a little bit of a shock involved. Like, well, you almost can't believe it's happening. So with the chair shot, I'll just preface it with this. I take no pride in ever or solace or satisfaction in ever hurting anybody. It's not what we do. And even if it's what one of us do, and John has a reputation for being rough with people in the ring, he's been rough with me plenty of times, it's still not an excuse for any kind of unprofessional behavior to hurt anybody and do that level of damage. So, and there was a thing where I had mentioned to John before the match, could you be on your knees or somewhere in a position where I can hit you with the seat because he's a monster.
Yeah, 6'6" or something. Legit.
6'6", 300 pounds. I mean, he's bigger than Hogan in some ways. He's a big dude. So I was afraid when I hit him with the chair that I was going to hit him exactly where I was going to hit him, with the part of the chair that he got hit with. And he was super cool. And he goes, no, just lay it in. It's cool. I'll be fine. I'll lean into it or whatever. And that's what happened. When I get back into Gorilla, it's a ghost town until one person shows up. The Undertaker. It's me and Taker in Gorilla with nobody there. And I'm convinced Taker told everybody to leave. Came in, and at that point in my mind, it's like, do I keep my mouth shut and wait for him to talk to me? Do I explain myself? You're really in a part where you don't, and Taker's not easy to read. He's about as stoic and stone face, no matter what the situation is. Happy Taker is upset Taker is sad Taker, right? So in this case, am I dealing with shoot fighter Taker? Is he taping his wrist up like he did with the Austin Michaels thing? Or I'm looking for it all, James. So he comes up to me and he goes, hey, he goes, let me talk to you for a second. His demeanor wasn't intimidating, but he was like, hey, our roster's really thin right now. We can't afford to lose anybody. What you just did there, we're probably going to be down a guy. And I go, Taker, I swear to God, I did not do it purposely. I didn't do it. I'm waiting back here to see if he's okay. So if he comes back here and punches me or does whatever, I'm standing right here. I'm not running from it. He goes, I understand. He goes, you didn't mean to do it, but we just need to be more careful. We can't afford to lose anybody. I go, I promise it'll never happen again. That was the end of it. John came back smiling. He goes, hey man, you got me, And I was like, dude, I'm so sorry. And he was just like, no, it's cool. It's cool. And he goes, as a matter of fact, I want you to go to the magazine and tell them you did it as a shoot. You gave me a receipt.
Really?
I want to make this into something. So I go there. He's there. I'm telling the magazine, I go, is that cool? He goes, no, fucking harder. I was like, well, okay. He goes, go harder. He goes, I did the meaning, and he's very much business about it. Now, here's the funny, not so funny conclusion of the story. We do it. It gets published on the website, I think on the magazine, but definitely the website publishes it. And the next week I come to TV and John pulls me aside and he goes, hey man, about that thing, like that interview you did. And I go, did you change your mind? Are you mad at me now? And he goes, no. And he goes, but we never told Taker. And he called me during the week.
Oh no.
And he said, is there something you want to tell me about an article on the internet? So now Taker is ready to, after I said, hey, I didn't do it on purpose. Now I'm doing an interview where I said do it on purpose. His buddy didn't clue him into it. And he's ready to confront me again at TV. So
if you're new here, be sure to hit subscribe. If you liked the video, please make sure to leave a like and a comment below and tell us your thoughts. If you wanted to help out the channel as well, we also have memberships available, and you can check out our Twitch links in the description box below, as well as join our Discord. That's all we have for you today. We'll see you in the next one.